Cyril, his only other full-time paid employee who helped him year-round at the winery, and Sandrine, a local university student who hosted in the tasting room on weekends and holidays, and whom he had hired, if truth be told, more for her beauty than for her wine knowledge or ability to count change. Every year there were a slew of North Africans who picked grapes at harvest time, but they rarely came near the house, and he felt racist, thinking of them as thieves. They were so eager to work during the vendange, a back-breaking job that Olivier had gladly done as a student, but that nowadays so many young French refused. Olivier then thought of his immediate family. Only their heads weren't in a line-up at the Palais de Justice, but sitting around at dinner, not in the Bastide's elegant dining room where his wife liked to eat, but at the long wooden kitchen table before a roaring fire. It was a comforting image, and one that usually made him smile, but today it only gave him a knot in his stomach. There would be no reason why Élise, his wife of 20 years, would move the wines. Although she fully supported the Bonnard winery, she was a teetotaler, and her interests lay more in the design shop that she owned with a friend in Aix than in Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvèdre. He couldn't fathom why Victor, his 18-year-old son, who had been fascinated by the earth and vines since he could walk, would steal the precious bottles, nor his pride and joy, the 13-year-old Clara, always with a book under her nose, and the best student in her class every year since kindergarten. Olivier's father lived with the family on the ground floor in a separate wing of their large 18th-century house. Albert Bonnard was 83 years old and, though in good physical health, was beginning to tire easily and lose his memory. Last week, Olivier found his father slowly walking along the rows of vines, talking to the plants, thanking them for this year's generous bounty. Olivier stood up and stretched his sore legs. He had been sitting on the step in a daze for nearly an hour now. He turned around with a jolt as someone came down the cellar stairs. He half expected to come face to face with the thief, back to pick up some of the 1960s that he or she, Olivier didn't want to be sexist, had missed. "I saw the light on. Are you picking out some wines for our dinner tomorrow night?" Élise Bonnard asked her husband. "Oh," she continued, "I can tell from that stunned look on your face that you have forgotten all about the dinner with the Paulik." Olivier was always pleased to see his wife, even after so many years of marriage, and that afternoon even more so. Though she didn't drink alcohol, she was a fine taster, and she loved to travel around France, and sometimes abroad with Olivier on his wine tours. Last year, they had been to Argentina on an exchange between South American growers and French ones. Today, seeing Élise, Olivier realized just how lucky he was and how much he needed her. His eyes filled up with tears, and his shoulders fell forward and began to shake. Élise Bonnard looked again at her normally very composed husband, the smile now gone from her face, and she ran down the rest of the steps to put her arms around him. "Mon amour!" At that moment, every inch of Olivier Bonnard's almost 2-meter frame collapsed, and the tears began to flow, interrupted by huge sobs. Élise Bonnard took some Kleenexes out of her pocket and gave them to her husband. Olivier whispered a thank you, blew his nose repeatedly, and sighed. He breathed in and out a few times to calm himself down, as they had always taught the kids to do when they had fallen or were upset. Only then did Olivier turn his body, revealing the empty racks of wine. "What the—" Élise gasped. She walked closer to the racks, as if her eyes were playing a game on her. 4 generations of Bonnards had been making wine on this same estate, near Rognes, 30 minutes north of Aix-en-Provence, since Olivier's great-grandfather had purchased the land and the crumbling Bastide at the end of the 19th century. It was now fully restored and historically listed.